Okay, recording is on.
All right. That's interesting there. Okay, so the whole of this is right there. We've got these pieces right here. Let me move this. Interesting. Where's the root piece? If this is a root, okay, which, let me turn that off. And it says this is, that's the root. Why isn't the rest following it? This makes no sense. Wait, they don't have a parent. Okay. Well, that design works, but okay. He needs training up on making sure things are properly parented, because skeletons that don't have a proper hierarchy can sometimes act funky inside of Unity. Has this one got it? Let me try here. No. These are not properly parented to this base bone, which basically...
Can you show me how they are laid out in the hierarchy over there?
Yes, I can. Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. These are just bones. They're not laid out in a hierarchy. If these were connected up, they would have a parent over here, in this case root, and you would see a dotted line.
Oh, okay.
So they are not parented at the moment. So as it is, we're getting the oops, sorry. Okay. So we're getting the animation. He has these rotating. I don't know if you can see it right there.
Yeah.
And he's using some smart techniques, such as he's moving along. Now, personally, if I was doing it, I'd also have him rattling up and down a bit, getting a bit of a shake to him and such.
Okay.
But that's animation choices, and that's giving that additional feedback on it. Now, let's take a look at this one. I'm going to stop this, and we're going to rotate it. Well, actually, let's just move it off. Okay. So good news is that's attached, but he didn't put another bone up here for the secondary turret area, which is normally a good idea to have. Also, he has not expanded it for this piece right here, which, let me take a look at that. How is this done? L? Yeah. Okay, so that is shiftable by nature of it, easily shiftable. So it needed an additional bone. Is this supposed to be finished, or is this him working?
Right now, it's kind of based off what your feedback is, kind of gears what we're going to go for next.
Let me take a look here. He's hidden a bunch of things. There we go. Now they're back. Okay, so in an edit mode, it's all one piece. So that much is good. All right, it looks pretty solid for what we're looking at here. There is some oddities here. All right, wait. All right. So the way these are working, yeah. Let me take a look here. How has he got the... Oh dear, he's only got the left shape keys doing both at the same time. So that needs to be properly cleared out. Basically, this side needs to do its thing, this side needs to do its thing.
Well, he did make a mention of whether we wanted to animation on both tracks. I told him that it wasn't really that important because of the camera zooming in. I didn't think there'd be much of a difference between moving the left versus the right.
Well, let's go over the thing. If for some reason you see, for example, you want this thing to turn in place, these treads got to move in opposite directions if your camera's on it for it to look about right, unless you're off like this.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be.
Okay, if you can't zoom in like this, then there's probably not a lot of reason to do it. because you won't be able to make it out. Keep in mind, my opinion is then you don't even need the rotation. These things could just rattle whenever this thing's turning, because they won't be able to see the spin level of it. So that by itself is a notable thing. So could possibly get rid of these bones for those to spin depending on the style you use. Overall, if we don't have to worry about the, let me take a look here. I'm going to check something out. Do I have textured? No, there isn't anything here. Has it been UV mapped? Give me a second. I'm going to see what else we got here. Wow. No UV map yet. Let me just try that out. Smart, go. Okay. And let's see how this thing UV maps out based on its thing here. We'll make a new one and we'll call it color grid. All right. That's odd. Is this thing limited in what it shows? No? Why are we not seeing the... Oh, it's possibly in cycles render. Odd. Haha. There we go. Okay. These are x-rayed. Let me go ahead and move this entire thing over to another layer so I can come back to it later. All right. I'm checking the surfaces, making sure. Are you? Do you know the term Z fighting?
No.
Okay. When two surfaces are really close together in parallel, what'll happen is they'll do this little flickering back and forth thing.
Okay.
And that's the complete name is Z depth fighting. And the fighting of it is not being sure which surface to show, because they're both the same distance away. So instead of one being in front of the other, they just start flickering back and forth. You see it in video games all the time.
Yeah.
So if you look here, by nature of this, there's no flickering. So he's got the surfaces on this well done. There isn't any problems there. Don't see any other glitches. Even if there's ones on the inside there, if you can't see it, it's not a problem. So that's good. All right, so overall, the model looks like it's reasonably solid. The skeleton here will work, although all of these bones need to be properly parented to this root bone, which is as simple as going through each one, going to the individual bone and telling it that it needs to be properly parented just by selecting root on each one.
Yeah.
So, not hard to do. But the reason why you do that is because it needs a hierarchy for the bone structure and unity to use it properly. You can get away with not having it, but it means all those bones will be separate, and certain things you might try and do encoding and such could glitch. So,
okay.
Yeah, expected behavior. Not to mention when you're working with other people, like other animators or programmers who are used to it, if they see all their bones laying around and they're not properly connected, they'll be sitting there waving a hand at you going, why is this all broken? So it's just generally a good idea there. Let me think here. I'm just not, he's got the bones on there. It works. couple of,
what about the shape keys? Are we still okay there?
well, it looks like it. I mean, it's doing its thing. The shape keys are right there.
Okay. So I'd say this, outside of just connecting the bones, I'd say the tank is now ready for production as far as being put into Unity and actually used.
It looks like it. Right now I've broken this one because I'm doing all kinds of terrible things to it.
Yeah.
But it was doing smoothly at one point. I saw that. So,
Okay.
which is it supposed to be doing? Give me a second here. 15. Yeah, I'll just reload it real quick. All right, now we hit play again.
How are you opening? How are you opening the tank in Blender without actually importing it?
Because it's a blend file.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I'm used to getting the FBX file. I always have to import it.
Advice as a project manager: it is all right to have FBXs. Two things you need to make sure of: always get the original blend files and make sure the blend files work. The reason I say this is I've seen more people get a hold of FBXs and such and never get their final project files, or not have a contract with the individual to get those project files, and suddenly have them go, no, I give you the FBX, but you do not get my project files, which is utter and total BS. Anyone who does that, you don't work with them. I don't want to hear any reasons about anyone who tries that crap. Just needs to go. That's it. They're working on your hour. You should be getting the project files. So the thing is, you'll want to make sure that you get those project files, because if you need to make modifications of any sort to the model, you can't from an FBX. You can try and re-import it, rebuild it, and everything else, but it will break everything, and you'll have to rebuild it basically halfway from scratch. So make sure those original files, 3D Studio Max, Blender, Lightwave, it doesn't matter what you're doing it in, you need to have those source files.
Okay.
Let me think here. I don't see anything about this that throws me off in comparison with the other one. You're going to have, due to the nature of what he's got here, lighting issues. The other thing is, give me a moment. When this is animating, I will almost guarantee this bottom track is not sliding here. See this piece right here?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using texture animation on any of this, it will not flicker across this, I'm betting. I'm not sure, but...
Well, from what I see here, I think at this point it's it fits into our model of growing the models over time. As long as we have the Blender file, I think I don't see there to be a reason to spend a whole heck of a lot of time on, because we still have some coding that we need to get back to, and that's what we're trying to do. So it kind of goes back to the part about keeping it simple and then making it to where we can build upon it.
Well,
When
keep
the
in
time
mind,
comes.
unless they see underneath those treads, well, actually, no, it may be a problem here when you're animating here, because you can see the top of the treads on that seam there. So if there's no animation across there and that piece isn't being animated, give me a moment. I got to UV map this thing again, okay?
Okay.
So let me go ahead and switch to Blender Renderer just for testing. Open up this, go here, UV wrap. Okay, now let's just do the smart unwrap. Great, let's do this, make a new one. We use color grid, we hit okay, and then we switch over to textured. Okay, and now we just run the, oh, no, that is, now here's the thing, I do that, why is it doing the glitch thing now? Oh, I know what the glitch thing is. It's not actually glitching. It's due to the nature of how this is going. You're seeing it jump back to the beginning. It's actually smooth on terms of this point coming down,
Mm-hmm.
if you watch it, but the texture's showing it. So
Yeah.
let me give you the quick rundown on this. The only way to make this usable on here is each of these little square areas need to have the exact same texture going down to it. So each of your little tread pieces, so to speak, needs to be 1 square wide. Can't even be 2 because this only moves effectively 1 square in this case. So basically every one of these little block areas here need to have the exact same bit of trim texture
Okay.
on it going through, which means on this texture over here, you will need to have, I don't know, rivets, whatever you want to call it, divots that are several wide. In fact, over here, you'll need the same thing. So you're going to need to have a strip of them right here, and then just have them use from this repeating strip over here at random points and grab them off of here. Make sure they all look alike. And they have to look exactly alike. They can't have variance because the variance won't travel properly because they only go 1 and then restart. That's not a problem, but it is something to keep in mind with it. So this area is going to be a bit repetitive. Same thing goes for the treads on each of these sides. Each one of these 1 treads, I believe this only goes 1. Let me take a look at it. Yeah, see, this only goes 1 unit here when it rolls down. So this effectively rolls down to here. So each one of these long things needs to be a single tread piece.
Okay.
And I believe on tanks they're usually 2 wide, but you just don't have a choice here. So with those things, now this could be rebuilt, of course, to allow for 2 tread units to make it look a little more realistic and have each of these things be 2 tread. But the fact is, with this being a grid like this, you're probably going to need to have it. The only other way you get that to work is if you have, instead of it being 1 by 1s, having it 1 by 2s, and each one stacked up on here. So you'd get rid of that one, get rid of that one, have this one, get rid of this one, and have it to where they each come down as a set, so to speak, in pairs. Okay. So can be done, but animation style technique is going to determine that. If you make these each individuals, then you won't be able to see the effect any longer when it's animating, because it'll look like one repeating error. It will look like one thing, and the visual illusion will be that it's continuing on back, because each one will overlap onto the previous one. This one will get down to here, and then it'll get down to here, and each one will look like it's sliding. Have you ever, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got you.
All right. So what else would you like to know? Because overall, this looks feasible.
Okay.
There's, how to put it? It's a start.
Yes. That we can build upon.
Yeah. The key thing is you need additional bones. 1 for this thing up here if that machine gun's going to actually be active at times. You need 1 for this over here, so that this can be raised and lowered. With this system here, you can definitely get the effect of the gun going, including things like the recoil, because if I'm correct, these actually shift slightly when they go off. I also know that the gun itself does the same thing.
Yeah.
So
and we're gonna feed all that animation in there eventually, but right now we just want something that we can really play with and make sure that the game coding works before we move forward with any more models. I think the next step that we do will be basically creating the other 5 models that we need for land, air, sea, and submarine. Having 1 for each of those.
My advice is get the pipeline done on 1 of these. Use that same pipeline and methods for the others after this one's done. Get 1 thing done from beginning to end. Make sure your pipeline's finished up, because you want to know that you can actually get a complete pipeline for 1 of these before you start trying to build them all at the same time, or you may build 4 dead ends that can't get any farther.
Okay.
Always start with one thing and just get it from beginning to end.
Well, the only thing that we're missing at this point would be to import it into Unity and write the animation class that'll handle it.
No, the only thing you're missing is the entire art thing of it and making it look like something other than a gray box.
Oh,
I'm
you're
saying
talking UV wrapping and texturing it then.
yes,
Okay.
definitely. Now, keep in mind, if you don't even have to texture this thing, technically, you could just, well, you could texture it, but you could also use some cheap things of just having solid color texture on it.
Yeah,
Color palette.
we've been using a color palette with material, creating materials out of it and using a color palette.
So that is an option, and solid color will look very Lego-ish, but depending on what your overall look you're going for, it may work really well.
Yeah. Well, we're going for I think our color palette is 256 colors. So I'd have to go back and look, but I think we already set 8 color palettes for 8 different or 8 different teams, basically, or players.
Now, you're wanting this thing to be able to blow up. Have you all decided on the method of the tank being destroyed you want to use?
Probably an animation. Probably, like if it gets shot, the track looks like it's laying on the ground and the turret may be, somewhat blown off of it or something. I don't know. Some sort of animation, I think, is what we're going to go with the units.
Well, a total collapse of the thing, of it falling apart, could easily be done by a series of morphs. You wouldn't even have to use bones for that to a degree, because all you'd have to do is set up a morph to where the track slides off or breaks, and the tank turret, slides to one side or anything. And then you could build 2 or 3 of those and have them where they don't die the exact same way.
Yeah.
Other methodologies, of course, are the fireball with pieces of it flying off, which is then all you've got to do is build a quick emitter that instantiates each of those little pieces while deleting this. The blowing up version gives you, there's 2 different ways to do this in game design. Do your tanks stay and block traffic?
Yeah. Yes. I think they, to a point, yes. I think we'll probably have to remove them once it gets cluttered. So we'll probably have to have a cap on there. Also, they're going to stay for salvaging. We may end up having like a salvaging team or something like that, or we have something called suburbs in the game where it's basically like little towns, like you think of a little town in Afghanistan that go to a wreckage site and salvage anything that they can pull out of there, pretty much.
Well, like I said, depending on the game rules will depend on how you want these to go. My natural reaction for any simple game is have them blow up and leave a scorch mark in their place. That way, if they're not actually able, if a tank can roll through a dead tank because it's not really there, you really want it gone, because otherwise you're giving a false statement if there's a wall there.
Yeah.
So that's my commentary on it. But as far as destroying these, you've got 2 major categories. Pieces flying off and leaving nothing behind but a scorch mark, and wreckage in place. Keep in mind, depending on if there's a smoke cloud or something, the techniques go from, let's see here. First one, actually animating it falling apart. In most cases, that happens so quickly, though, that any in-depth animation is wasted. The second one is what we call a switcheroo, where we have a explosion or smoke cloud or something else like that that hides the area for a moment, and then we just switch out the models, one for the broken one. And it's a broken static model. What does this do for us? Well, 2 things. First of all, we can then make the model of the broken one look exactly how we want it, and even have multiple variants of it, and they'll be fairly simple. We don't have to worry about a lot of different things. The second thing is, because it is a separate model and we removed the tank, we've removed all the bones, all the code, everything else, and it's just sitting there, and it becomes a dynamic part of the landscape as opposed to a fully animatable tank. So unless you've got a reason that you needed to continue animating for some reason, removing all of those bones, animations, all that information, first of all, frees up memory and frees up graphics processing space. CPU, memory, and graphics. And anytime you're dealing with a real-time strategy, being able to get rid of those is a good thing. So those are my recommendations based on there. Again, it depends on what your needs are for it. Just keep in mind, any needs you think you have are usually wants. So make sure that you do those tests with, 1,000 or 10,000 tanks on the screen and see what your numbers look like. Let's see here. How many, is this a single player game?
No.
So it's multiplayer.
Yeah, it'll be mainly a PvP.
So there'll only be 2 players on the screen at one time.
No, there'll be 8, 4-on-4 at max.
4, okay, so there'll be up to 4 players max. Yep. How many units, what's the unit cap for each one?
Right now we have a variant. It's as you progress through the game, you get more and more control of the start of the game is you just join the military.
What's the worst?
Honestly, we haven't set a full cap on it. I'm thinking probably around 500, but that could change.
Okay.
That's per player.
Modern computers, even modern middle-range computers, should be able to handle that.
Well, and our graphics, we're using Minecraft-like graphics as well, and I don't think there will be an issue with graphics as long as we're on a PC or console.
I think you've got a misinterpretation of how that works. This is a 3,000 triangle tank. I can make you a photorealistic tank for 3,000 triangles.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's polygon based and it looks like this doesn't mean it's easier to render. I could see where that thought pattern comes in, but technically it's just a 3,000 triangle tank. Now, you're comparing it possibly with a high resolution tank meant for a first person shooter or something, but in real-time strategy, we've got to compare it with real-time strategy assets and what they do in professional areas. That would be things like StarCraft, and other
well,
things.
we're not gonna know until we A/B test it. Once we get to that point, then
I'm just trying to shift your thinking on the fact it doesn't matter that what its style is. This is still a tank that could technically be done in a photorealistic manner at a distance that could look exactly like a real tank and look pretty darn good. The reason why is anytime you have a lot of right angles like this kind of model, it has even more spots where it has to have detail in it than a lot of cases a realistic tank, especially, for example, along those treads and such. That in mind, just keep in mind, this style isn't saving you really any triangles.
Okay.
Now, it may be saving you a lot of texture memory, which is good, but 3,000 triangles for a real-time strategy asset, I wouldn't be surprised by that. That feels run-of-the-mill for me. It's been a while since I've done one, but it still feels in that sweet spot. So I'm not saying it's got too much. I'm just saying you're not saving any. Being able to get 500 units on the board, well, the key thing we got to worry about is how much can they see on the screen at one time. How much is going to actually be rendered. Because in most cases, the ones that are off screen aren't going to be rendered or animated. So then all we have to worry about is how the AI deals with pathfinding. Have you tested your pathfinding engine with 500 units at the same time?
No, I think the most I got up to was somewhere around 200, 250.
May want to check that. You may have to adjust the code. One of the key things I recommend for real-time strategies is when you have a whole bunch of units that are all using the same pathfinding as a group, you may want to do a system of 2-layer pathfinding, them all trying to use effectively a very similar but offset path. and when they run into things, then have them try and path around it separately. Those two things, first of all, they all tend to look like they're moving as a unit then, because they're all using one path copied over, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
How to put it, have each of the smaller tanks not just trying to stay in step with the primary tank that's considered, quote, the leader of the set. Because 500 things all trying to get a pathfinder system at the same time, you may find that depending on how the pathfinding code is written, it could, it could crash a computer.
Yeah.
Let me think here. Sorry, that's a bit off topic, but AI design was something I had to, is one of my areas. So,
Well, we'll come back to AI stuff. Right
okay.
now, I just want to focus on getting our objectives done. That way we can move
Okay.
on. So at this point, I think that's pretty much all we need.
Yeah. I don't see anything about this which strikes me as badly done or wrong. It's just that you need to qualify in the way this is designed for how the art's going to be applied to it, such as on the treads. Also, it needs a few more bones to fit in the rest of the systems. Only other things I can think of, everything else I can think of would be special tricks you can do in order to make movement more organic, such as adding a bone right here on this tread and having it at the same time that this mesh is being morphed, having it where a bone has a bleed off on these and is strong here, and have it where it comes in and out, giving it that little bit of depth. But the fact is, by the time you get back here, you wouldn't be able to see that. So the technique might be useful for another model, but all that stuff's underneath, and you're going to lose that visual effect at these distances. So the other thing is, if you're only back here like this and you can't zoom in on it, make sure to keep your pixel range at most like 8 pixels per section here on these. Because, well, the thing is, the only thing you need to model it for is dealing with the closest resolution you can get, and each one of these is only going to be around 1 or 2 pixels high. So technically, you can almost make these things solid colors.
Okay.
Because the cutoff for that is it's only going to be how many other pixels this is, and what is this, like 256 by 256 it's sitting in? So each one of those is only going to be like 1 or 2 or 3 pixels high on the treads, meaning that you don't have to get a lot of detail in on the texture on it. You'll want to test it out, but that means also you don't want really complex textures on it, because they'll just turn into noise at that scale. They'll all just get blended together and become mud.
Okay.
It'll average them out into one color or a bunch of flickering colors, depending on the rendering system.
Yeah.
All right. That's about all I have for you.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. I will. I'll get this video over to the team so they can review it as well, and then I'll get back to you with anything else we might need.
Okay. I wish you luck on the project and keep me informed. I'm interested in seeing how this turns out.
All right. Thank you.
All right.